Okay guys, I've zoomed in a little bit there. Hopefully you'll be able to see it easy enough and I don't put you out of frame. So I've just put my nitrate or nitrile gloves on. And I'm going to put my mask on and my goggles. So you won't hear me talking after I start putting them on. But I'll swap over to voiceover and explain what I'm doing anyway. So to start with though, before I slip those on, is I'm just spraying some of the isopropyl alcohol. It's, I don't know what percentage of alcohol it is, it's pretty high though. Yeah, I'm sure it's on there somewhere. On my gloves, I've washed my hands as well and rinsed them under water. I've actually got a couple of spare coasters up the back. I'm not sure how many I'll be able to do because I'm at the end of my containers of stone coat countertop at the moment. So I might not get too far with them, but I'll know I'll at least get one. There are a lot of online resin calculators and you can do the measurements of the project you're doing and it'll tell you exactly how much resin you need to mix depending on what ratios are recommended or advised by the company that you're using. Some are a 1-to-1 ratio, so it's like 20 mils of part A and 20 mils of part B. Some are 2-to-1, 40 mils of one, 20 of the other. Some are even 3-to-1. So it just really depends after you've done your research which company you want to go with. The only other thing, I live in somewhere where it's quite warm. If you're somewhere where it's cooler, you may need to stand your resin containers in some fairly warm water for maybe 10-15 minutes. It will help it run easier for you. I find I don't need to do that where I live. Okie dokie, so I'm just going to put on my mask and I'll stop talking and we'll get going. Right, I'm just putting my mask on. It does it behind my neck and I'm putting on my goggles and then we'll get going. Okie dokie. This is the part A and I've already dispensed that into the cup there. I had to tip it upside down to get out as much as I could as possible, and before I did I cleaned it very well with the isopropyl alcohol as well. So I already had a look at this and there's approximately 25 mils there, so I need to add 25 mils of part B because the stone coat countertops is a 1-to-1 ratio. Ensure your surface is level, and I'm just eyeballing it again just to make sure I've got the right measurement. And I've got the measurements facing towards me so I can see. And now I'm putting in part B, which is the hardener. Sometimes A is thinner and sometimes B is thinner. Whichever one is thinner is the one that you should put in first. It's less likely to stick to the edges of the mixing cup then. So I've eyeballed it and I've put in exactly 25 mils and I've now got 50 mils in there. And I've also cleaned my stir stick with the isopropyl alcohol and I'm now ready to mix. So I'm just going to speed this up because you just need to mix this particular one for 2 to 4 minutes, so watching me do it is pretty boring. Make sure you stir for the full amount of time that's recommended for the resin you're using. Stir, scrape down the sides, the bottom as you go, intermittently scrape off the stick as well. You'll notice bubbles forming, but don't worry about those. We'll address that later. It'll go cloudy at first, and then as you stir, it will become clear, and no strings will be seen when you pick it up. Okay, now we're ready to apply the resin that's been mixed, and the coasters are 10 centimetres square, so I'm probably maybe using about 10 to 12 mils And I've put it in the centre of this one because it's not completely flat, it's slightly raised on the edges, and I'm using the stir stick to push the resin out towards the edges. I'm not sure if this one's going to be very good once it's set. I think I'll probably have to do a second layer just because it isn't completely flat. It sort of lifts up at the edges. And yep, I'm just making sure it's right over to the edges. And as it is a coaster, I actually want it to go completely over the side as well, so that I can wipe over the coasters should they get dirty. So now I'm just pulling a little bit more towards the edge and over the side. I'm not worried if it drips down. I've got the silicone mat underneath. And I'll go all the way around. And then I'm just looking at it underneath the light to check. Now I'm using my heat source here to get rid of the bubbles. You don't stay in one spot. You move all over the area. You don't want to burn the resin at all. I am noticing with this small coaster though, because it does dip down in the bottom, that some of the lower bubbles are not popping. So I'll probably use my butane later and get them fully out. Now I'm using my gloved hand here just to make sure that there is an even coating on the edge. And I'm not worried if it drips down underneath a bit because I'm going to put cork backing on the back of it anyway. And I can tell I need a little bit more in quite a few spots, just as I said, because this coaster in particular is not level on the edges at all, even though my table is. So, yep. I'm using some baby wipes now just to wipe my hands. It's very good at getting the resin off so that I can pick up my equipment without getting resin everywhere. If you notice bare spots, you can just drizzle in a little bit more. This particular resin, I think, has a working time of about 40 to 50 minutes, depending on your weather conditions. And it's a stone coat countertop epoxy, and it does have UV resistance to help minimise yellowing, and it does have heat resistance in it, so that you can put a hot cuppa on. I'm putting on my butane now to pop those little bubbles I couldn't quite get with the larger tool. And there we go. The same thing with the other heat source. Don't stay in one spot. Keep moving, otherwise you'll burn the resin. And now I'm looking underneath my ring lights and any little bits of dust, or I get little tiny bugs out here in the garage. I remove them now before I cover it up with my food cover cloth. It doesn't seem to matter what I do. I always end up with these little tiny things that I can't even see with the eye at first until they're dead and flailing in my resin. But yeah, good pair of tweezers and a baby wipe gets those out. Just wiping up any resin drips as well. If I don't, it's no biggie because it's on the silicone mat. I can pick them off once they've hardened anyway. Right, then we're done. I'm just going to cover it up. 24 hours have now passed and I'm just checking the resin pieces. As you can see, I was able to do 4. The 2 round ones are actually a second coat, so I didn't need the resin to go over the side on those. I just sort of domed it a bit on the top. I'm just checking the surface under the light and feeling it with my fingers, making sure everything's okay, and I'll just check underneath, but I'm not too worried about these coasters as I'll put cork underneath anyway. I'm just peeling off any hard lumps that I can feel. They tear off quite easily on the cheap coasters. And the round ones have come up beautiful, very pretty, no irregularities on the surface and no drips down the side, I should say on the back, because I was just doming them. And that's the second one there. It's also come up really nicely. And the last one was the one that I showed you how I did the resin with, and I can tell straight away, just moving it under the light, that it does have bare patches, so I'm going to have to lightly sand it and pour a second coat. I'll come around, you may not be able to see it, but it's on the edges where I thought it might not be very good. It's sort of rough and you can see the canvas underneath. So when I get some more resin, I might show you that process and zoom in closely for you. Thanks for watching, everybody.